Let's now start the posting procedure. This is the first entry in the General Journal of Marty Medical Clinic. July 1, debit cash, 500,000. So we have to look for the cash ledger. This one. By the way, please note that this cash ledger and all the other account ledgers of the entity do not have beginning balances for the month of July carried over from the ending balances of June, because the business began only in July, and hence there were no journal entries recorded and posted prior to July 1. Now, recall that cash was debited in the journal entry on July 1. So we need to post on the left side or the debit side of this cash ledger. Remember, debit simply means left, while credit means right. The date must be the date of the journal entry, July 1. If the year were given, it should be written on top of this July 1. But in this problem, no year is mentioned. Under the column heading Particulars, let's have a very short description of the transaction resulting to the journal entry on July 1. Investment by owner or simply investment. Especially so since the width of this Particulars column is quite narrow. Under the column Debit, we need to write the amount of the debit to cash in the journal entry made on July 1. Under the reference column, we need to write the source of the information of our posting, GJ1, meaning General Journal, page 1, where the journal entry pertaining to our posting can be found. After posting this debit to cash in the ledger, we need to write the account number of cash here in the reference column of the journal, 101. So when do we write the appropriate account number here in the reference column of the General Journal? After posting a debited or credited account. That is why this column is sometimes labeled PR, meaning posting reference. We only fill this in as we post information from the journal to the ledger, not as we journalize the transactions. Having an account number here in the journal signifies that the corresponding account has been posted to the general ledger already. Those accounts here with no account number yet have not yet been posted. If you do not follow that proper procedure, but instead decide to write the account numbers as you prepare journal entries, when you stop posting for a while, such as when somebody interrupts you, you may not be able to easily recall or remember later on where you left off and where you must begin again. You may even commit the mistake of skipping the posting of a particular account or accounts, which will cause a ledger balance to be wrong. So please, follow the correct way of classifying or posting. Write the account number of a specific account in the PR column of the journal only after posting that account in its ledger. Let's continue posting now. So immediately, by looking at this reference column, we know what we need to post next. This debit to equipment in the amount of 820,000 because it does not have a reference number here yet. So let's post to the ledger of the equipment account, debit or left side. What's next now? Write this account number of equipment in the reference or folio or PR column of the journal along this row of this equipment account which we just posted. Next, post this credit to Marti Capital amounting to 1,320,000. Credit. Therefore, posting must be to the right side of Marti Capital ledger. For the description or particulars, you may still write investment. Although for me, it is better to just specify the types of assets invested. Because anyway, it is already understood that this posting resulted from an investment transaction. Because credit to the capital account usually results from owner's investment. Especially so, since the date is not the end of an accounting period and therefore cannot be from closing the drawing or the income summary account. Anyway, you will learn about closing entries in the income summary account in the future. And let me remind you that there should be no peso sign in the ledger, just as there should be no peso sign in the journal. Actually, if we were using ledger sheets or journal sheets, meaning the paper, ledger paper, journal paper, columnar paper, the money columns of which have subcolumns intended to separate clearly the digits of an amount, commas, and even decimal points, in case there are centavos, must likewise not be placed. Please keep that in mind. Omit the peso sign, the commas, and the decimal points when writing amounts in the money columns of journals and ledgers. For the purpose of clearer illustration, however, in my videos, I have to include commas and decimal points. Going back now to what we were doing, after posting information to this capital ledger, what's next? Write this account number of Marti Capital in the PR column of the journal. Next journal entry to post, July 3 this time. Debit medical supplies, 50,000. So let's look for the ledger of medical supplies. Post to the left side because the account title medical supplies was debited in the July 3 transaction. Purchase is a sufficient description. No need to write purchase of medical supplies because that is already understood since we posted to the ledger of medical supplies. The reference or PR is still page 1 of the general journal because the journal entry with the debit to medical supplies was made on page 1 of the journal. After posting, go back to the journal entry and write this account number of medical supplies in the reference column. Next, credit cash, 50,000. Let's post. Take note, credit side, because cash was credited in the journal entry. Posting the correct information, including correct figure, to the wrong side is a common mistake of some students. So please be careful when posting. Post to the correct side. What is next now? Write this account number in the reference column of the journal. This one now, July 4. Debit, furniture and fixtures, 60,000. Post to the ledger of furniture and fixtures. Then, update the reference column of the journal. Next, post this credit to accounts payable, 60,000 also. Update now the PR column by writing the account number of accounts payable. By the way, writing the journal page number in the reference or PR column of the ledger and the ledger account number in the reference or PR column of the journal is known as cross-referencing, which makes it easy to trace an entry to and from the journal and ledger. July 5 now. Cash, 78,000. Post to the left side of the cash ledger. Then, write this account number in the PR column of the journal. Debit accounts receivable, 80,000. Post to the left side of the accounts receivable ledger. Then, go back to the journal and update the reference code. Post again. This time, medical fee revenue, 158,000 to the credit or right side of the appropriate ledger. Account number 601 to the PR portfolio code. So you see, posting to the general ledger is very easy. We just have to continue doing the same procedure for all these other journal entries of Marty Medical Clinic. When all postings have been properly done, the general journal of the business would appear like this. While its general ledger like this. The next thing to do then is to get the balance of each ledger account. Let's begin with cash. You may add the figures in the debit money column and write the sum. You may even write total debit. Incidentally, getting the sum of the amounts or adding all the numbers in a money column is called footing. So after footing all the debits, foot also the amounts in the credit money column. Write the sum and the words total credit. Then deduct the two totals from each other and write the difference in the money column of the larger amount. So for this cash ledger, 1,308,000 minus 822,000 equals 486,000 debit balance. Because 1,308,000, the amount of the total debits is greater than the amount of the total credits, the difference of 486,000 should be written on the debit side. The date may also be written July 31, which means that on July 31, the cash account has a debit balance amounting to 486,000. Then, double rule the balance. However, you may also choose not to get and write the total of each money column anymore, as I usually do. Instead, just add all the amounts in a money column. Then, subtract each amount in the other money column. So here, press your calculator. 500,000 plus 78,000 plus 80,000 plus 500,000 plus 150,000 minus 50,000 minus 500,000 minus 40,000 minus 150,000 minus 82,000 equals 486,000 balance of cash. Since we started adding the figures in the debit column and then subtracted those in the credit column, and the 486,000 as appearing in the calculator is positive, that means the total debits are greater than the total credits. Or in other words, the 486,000 is a debit, not a credit balance. Did you get that? If we add first all the amounts on the debit side and then subtracted each amount on the credit side and the resulting figure is negative, that means the total credits are greater than the total debits, which follows that the balance is a credit balance. But then again, in this case of the cash balance, when we had started with adding the debited amounts before subtracting those in the credit column, the resulting amount of 486,000 is positive based on the calculator, right? That connotes it is a debit balance on July 31. Then, since this is the balance, double rule. Evidently, this cash ledger shows all the changes, meaning the increases and the decreases that took place in the cash account during the month of July. Let's determine the July 31 accounts receivable balance now, beginning with the debit side. 80,000 plus 80,000 plus 90,000 minus 80,000 on the credit side equals positive or negative in your calculator. Positive 170,000, which means debit balance. Of course, just by observing these figures, you know that the total debits must be greater than the total credits. And hence, the balance is really a debit balance. You don't even have to press your calculator to get the balance. This 80,000 credit cancels out this first 80,000 debit. So that this second 80,000 plus 90,000 on the debit side equals 170,000 debit balance. Well, actually, we really should expect these accounts receivable, just like the cash, to have a debit balance because its normal balance or increase side being an asset is debit, right? When we get a credit balance for an asset account or even for an expense or drawing account, something must be wrong. Except in a rare case like a bank overdraft resulting from the withdrawal of cash from a bank account or issuance of checks in excess of the deposits made, which would cause the cash in bank ledger account to have a credit balance. Bank overdraft, however, is beyond the scope of basic accounting. That's why when determining ledger balances, you should expect asset accounts like cash and accounts receivable as well as drawing and expense accounts to have debit balances in the general ledger due to the fact that assets, drawing, and expenses have normal balance of debit. Similarly, when we arrive at a debit balance for an account whose normal balance is credit, like capital, revenue, and liability, we must have committed a journalizing or posting mistake. That should prompt us to double check our work. We may have failed to post an amount or posted it on the wrong side or posted a wrong figure. Back to what we were doing. What do we need to do with this 170,000 balance? Double rule. Medical supplies now. How much is the balance? 50,000 minus 35,000 equals 15,000 debit balance at the end of July. This time, equipment with two figures, both on the debit side. So, we just put 1,320,000 debit balance. For furniture and fixtures, only one amount. In such a case, we may write a horizontal line under this 60,000. Copy the same amount down to the next row and double rule. So we may write balance on July 31. Or, to save time and effort, we may just simply double rule this loan amount to stress that this is the balance by the end of July. Next, for accounts payable, 60,000 debit minus 60,000 credit equals 0. The question is, where should we write the 0? The answer, on the normal balance of the account. What is the normal balance of accounts payable? Credit. So we have to place 0 or simply a dash on the credit side. Therefore, the dash here signifies a 0 accounts payable balance on July 31. Double rule. Notes payable, 20,000, the only amount here. So, let's just double rule. Which means 20,000 is also its credit balance on July 31. Credit. Not surprising because notes payable, being a liability, has a normal balance of credit and therefore its balance must also be credit. Next, Marti Capital. Let's just put the credit column. Marti Drawing, loan amount. So just double rule. Medical fee revenue. Surgical fee revenue. Rent expense, just double rule also. Same with the salaries expense. Medical supplies expense. And finally, utilities expense. Thank you for watching.